Greetings, Mega Man fans, and welcome back to the Mega Man Super Fighting Robot LPA. In this episode, we will be taking on the second of the two super bosses, as well as the last unlockable boss in the game. You unlock this boss by defeating the Wily machine on Insane mode. In other words, beating Wily 6. Thankfully, you don't have to complete the entire game in Insane mode to get this fight because, well, Insane mode is called that for a reason. Anyway, the boss itself, well, if the layout isn't any indication, is actually a little closer to home. I mean, literally, we're in the shop screen right now. As for who the boss is, well, it seems Dr. Light has gotten into the teleporting capsule business with his own light capsule. Which it can be a fairly tricky boss, but much like Base, once you really start to understand it, it usually isn't too bad. The light capsule has the same little shadow teleport technique that Wily used. However, instead of telegraphing its attacks with these colorful auras, and I didn't need to slide there, its attacks are determined by what position it appears at. At that height, it'll use either Super Arm or Thunder Beam. And I figured it was Super Arm because Super Arm's height is actually slightly higher. At that height, it's Hyper Bomb it uses. That height is usually Ice Slasher. That height is either Firestorm or Thunder Beam, as demonstrated. That height is another Hyper Bomb. And that's a Firestorm or Hyper Beam. Thunder Beam? No, this is Mega Man, not Pokemon. And I actually think that's... oh, there's also that height for Rolling Cutter. In case you haven't figured it out, and in which case I'm kind of surprised, he actually uses upgraded versions of the Mega Man 1 weapons to arm his capsule. Which, that's pretty neat. I really like the references here. And it's pretty fitting that the weapons of Dr. Light's original set of Robot Masters is how he fights you. That being said, so long as you keep your distance from Light, his regular attacks are not terribly dangerous. And he takes extra damage from the Buster, so he's not terribly threatening until this point. Now that he's below half health, he gains access to a lovely little desperation move, which I suspect is where the Hyper Beam comment actually came from. Initially, he will just shoot, I believe it's a series of 10 of those arcing, spinning laser orbs down from the top center of the screen, as he shall kindly demonstrate. When these orbs strike the ground, they make shockwaves. And then, after he does that, he vanishes and reappears with two clones of himself. At which point they all fire hyper beams downwards, with one of them firing an additional set of 10 shockwaves downwards. Which one fires the shockwaves? Well, if you pay attention to the reflections in the capsule, you can actually spot the real one, maybe like a few seconds before it's too late. Like right now, the real one I recognize was in the middle. Reason? The real Dr. Light, his reflection, unsurprisingly, faces to the right instead of the left. Considering his Japanese name is Dr. Right, I suspect there's a pun in there. And given the fact they couldn't hit him, it's probably Thunder Beam. Yeah, it was, and I still managed to not avoid it. Okay, that's Hyper Bomb. And that's Hyper Beam. Actually, now that I think about it, considering the way the attacks stick to the ground, I wonder if it's a magnet beam reference. That would be interesting, going from utility to being one of the most dangerous attacks he has in his arsenal. And I'm covering him right now, but that's Dr. Light standing behind Mega Man. Brilliant placement, me. Oh, there he is. But yeah, that was the fight with Dr. Light. Not terribly difficult, even though he may have 2 health bars and is, you know, a capsule fight. Once you learn how to figure out what attacks he's going to use, he's really not hard at all. Particularly if he's using Rolling Cutter, that's pretty much free hits right there. If anything, considering the fact that he's what we unlock for beating Wily on Insane Mode, that was kind of disappointing, don't you think? Well, the thing is, I would not call that the real fight against Dr. Light. Oh no. There's only one way to fight him properly. You see, the only proper way to fight Dr. Light is to fight him on Insane Mode itself. This is the real challenge. In fact, I'm going to be completely honest with y'all. This is post-production commentary. Trying to pull this fight off live commentary? No thank you. I didn't even manage to beat him without armor pieces. I ended up having to grab the armor and the helmet, doing everything in my power to keep damage restrained. Because on Insane Mode, he hits like an absolute truck. As I'm sure you figured out by now, he's added extra weaponry to all of his basic attacks. The desperation move remains the same, but otherwise he adds extra weapons to everything. Firestorm adds Solar Blaze. Okay, which one is this one? Super Arm adds Power Stone, which is actually really dangerous. Ice Slasher adds Water Wave at the end. And Thunder Beam adds Plug Ball. Hyper Bomb adds Drill Bomb, so if you do decide to jump it, you're going to get a drill to the face. And Rolling Cutter adds Wheel Cutter, which makes it not free hits all day, every day. But yeah, even with the damage reducer, Dr. Light hits like a truck, which becomes especially problematic with Firestorm and Ice Slasher. Ice Slasher freezes you, and Firestorm burns you. Getting hit by either one of them is essentially a death sentence in this fight, as you're almost guaranteed to take 2 hits instead of 1. And in the average fight with him, you can basically only take 2 hits before you end up dying. Like, the only reason I win this fight, this round, is because I had pieces of the armor. And in fact, to be completely, perfectly honest, this is the first time I have ever beaten Dr. Light on Insane Mode, ever. He is so much harder on Insane Mode, but it is so much more satisfying when you finally pull it off. Someday I'll do it without the armor. And with Dr. Light defeated, that brings the Mega Man Super Fighting Robot LPA to its actual close. So, what do I have to say about this overall? Well, overall, this has been a really fun game to LPA. And a really fun game in general. Mega Man Super Fighting Robot is easily one of the best Mega Man fan games currently on the, well, market, for lack of a better term. It's pretty well made, though there are moments such as Coleman's stage, where I mention him time and time again, but I still feel it necessitates mentioning, where there are some small difficulty curve issues. Issues that are maybe a bit worse than usual. That being said, most of the level design hiccups overall are fairly small. It's not that hard at all to look past them and enjoy the game for what it is. Besides which, the fortress stages are generally a lot better for that sort of thing. The other thing this game does incredibly well is its boss design. Pretty much all the bosses are, at first glance, tricky, challenging, intimidating. But once you learn how they behave and understand them, they're usually not too bad. I like that sort of challenging but fair aspect. I appreciate the fact that they are, well, learnable. There's no bosses in here that are complete, utter RNG, which is a very, very good thing. And, of course, since I didn't really mention them much last time, the enemy design in this game is also pretty solid. And just, overall, this is a very, very solid product. I may prefer Rock Force, purely, if only for the reason that ultimately Rock Force tries more to give itself its own identity. It's more unique. But, that being said, Super Fighting Robot is a very, very close second. To the point that I would honestly say that, while Rock Force may be a personal preference, from a designer perspective, they're about equal. Mr. Weird Guy certainly did a very good job with this game overall. And for that, I say, thank you, Mr. Weird Guy, for making a really good fan game. If you haven't played Super Fighting Robot yet, again, I highly recommend you do so. It is an excellent product, and really, I don't think it's one you should miss out on. So, as for future plans, since I still have plenty of time left to talk about those, I don't know when I will be able to come back to these. See, I believe I've mentioned already that I was working on trying to get into college. Well, I've succeeded, but I now need to focus primarily on college preparation. As such, with both this LPA and Mega Man 42's LPA done, I'm going to have to go on hiatus again, and potentially for far, far longer than the previous one. I cannot say for sure when I will be back from hiatus. However, rest assured, I will be. There's still plenty of games that I want to cover, such as Mega Man Unlimited, Mega Man DOS Remake, Quint's Revenge, Mega Man Revolution. There's a number of them that are still out there that are definitely worth covering. So, I'll be back. I won't be able to tell you when, but this won't be the last video on my channel. That's for sure. So, with that's the end of the Super Fighting Robot LPA. For real. So, on that note, I really don't have much else to say. So, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed this LPA, and I shall be seeing you all for the next one. Whenever that ends up being. But, until then, goodbye! And thank you. All of you.